I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would write something like this, but maybe getting it out will help me make sense of what happened. Or maybe it won't, but at least I'll stop replaying the same moments over and over again in my head. This is about her, about us, and about the way love can lift you higher than you've ever been, only to drop you so violently that you wonder if you'll ever stand again. Her name was Emily. We met in one of the most unromantic places imaginable, the waiting area of a crowded train station. My train had been delayed for 2 hours, and I was in a foul mood, scrolling through my phone, trying not to glare at the world around me. Then, out of nowhere, I heard someone laugh, a bright, warm sound that cut through the frustration of the moment like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. I turned and saw her sitting on the hard wooden bench, a book in her hands, earbuds dangling uselessly around her neck. The book slipped from her fingers, and I picked it up before she could. "You like Murakami?" I asked, because I had recognized the cover immediately. She smiled. "God, that smile," and said, "He's my escape." That was the first thread between us, fragile but undeniable. We started talking about books, music, anything that could make the endless wait seem less unbearable. Time, which had been dragging, suddenly began to race. When the announcement finally came that our train was boarding, I felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. But as fate, or whatever cruel trickster governs these things, would have it, we ended up in the same carriage, seats just a few rows apart. What started as casual conversation stretched into hours of shared silences, laughter, and even a few confessions that I wouldn't normally give to strangers. She told me about how she was moving to the city for a new job, a fresh start after a painful breakup. I told her about my own restless feeling that something in my life was missing, though I wasn't sure what. I remember staring out the window as the countryside blurred past us, thinking, is this it? Is this the moment when my story finally begins? We exchanged numbers when we arrived, though both of us pretended it was just so she could send me the name of that obscure band she had recommended. But of course, it was more than that. That night, my phone lit up with her message before I had even worked up the courage to text her first. From there, things moved quickly, maybe too quickly. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Coffee dates that turned into long walks, walks that turned into late-night talks that turned into mornings where I woke up still hearing her voice in my head. Emily had this way of making the world sharper and softer at the same time, as if everything mattered more, but also somehow hurt less when she was around. But underneath it all, I could sense a heaviness in her. Sometimes, in the middle of our laughter, she would go quiet, her eyes drifting somewhere far away. I didn't press. I told myself she'd share when she was ready. After all, she had already told me about her breakup. It had been messy, filled with betrayal and lies. She had said she was healing, but sometimes scars run deeper than anyone realizes. There was one night, maybe 3 weeks after we met, when we sat on her balcony, drinking cheap wine from mismatched glasses. She looked at me with a seriousness that sent shivers down my spine and whispered, "Promise me you won't hurt me." I laughed nervously, but she didn't smile. She repeated it, "Promise me," and I did. God, I meant it with every part of me. But looking back now, I wonder if she was asking me something I was never truly capable of giving. The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day Emily became woven deeper into the fabric of my life. I'd never known intimacy like this, not just physical, though that was electric and undeniable, but emotional, the kind that makes you feel exposed in the most terrifying and exhilarating way. With Emily, it was as if I could finally exhale after holding my breath for years. We created routines that only we understood. Saturday mornings were for flea markets, wandering hand in hand among old vinyl records and faded photographs of strangers whose lives had long since ended. Sunday nights were for cooking together, if you could call it cooking. Usually it was pasta, sometimes burnt, often messy, but always filled with laughter. She had this terrible habit of singing off-key while stirring the sauce, and I pretended to be annoyed, though I secretly recorded her once because I never wanted to forget the sound. But beneath those golden hours, shadows lingered. Sometimes she would vanish into silence for a day or two. My texts would go unanswered, my calls ignored. And when she finally reappeared, she would brush it off with a flimsy excuse work had been crazy, she had fallen asleep early, her phone had died. I wanted to believe her, I needed to believe her. But the unease kept gnawing at me, quiet but insistent. There was one night when the cracks showed more clearly. We were lying in bed, her head resting on my chest, when she suddenly asked, "Do you ever feel like happiness is borrowed? Like it doesn't really belong to you, and one day you'll have to give it back?" Her words cut me. I tried to reassure her, telling her that happiness was something you built, not borrowed, but even as I said it, I could feel how hollow it sounded. She didn't argue, just closed her eyes and whispered, "I don't deserve you." I wanted to shake her, to make her see herself the way I saw her, brilliant, flawed, radiant, human. Instead, I just held her tighter, as if my arms could be strong enough to silence the ghosts that haunted her. The first real fight came not long after. It was about something stupid. I can't even remember the details now. Maybe I had forgotten to call when I said I would, or B, she thought I hadn't been listening to her. But the fight wasn't about the thing itself, it was about everything underneath. Her voice trembled with anger, and mine rose to match it. Words were said that neither of us meant, though at the time they felt like weapons. When the storm finally passed, she collapsed into tears, sobbing that she was broken, that she would ruin me like she ruined everyone else. I kissed her hair and whispered that she could never ruin me, that I wasn't going anywhere. I meant it then, with every part of me. But deep down, I also felt the first flicker of fear that love might not be enough to fix fractures inside her. Yet, despite the cracks, despite the arguments, our connection only deepened. It was a dangerous kind of love, one that thrived on intensity. Every reconciliation after a fight felt like a rebirth, a surge of passion that bound us tighter than before. It was addictive, like fire. You know it can burn you, but you keep reaching out anyway because the warmth is worth the risk. And then came the night that changed everything. The night she told me the truth about her past. It was late, closer to dawn than midnight, when she finally told me. We had been drinking, though not enough to blur the sharpness in her eyes. We were sitting on the floor of her apartment, backs against the couch, the city glowing faintly beyond the balcony glass. "Do you really want to know why I'm like this?" she asked suddenly, her voice quieter than the hum of traffic outside. I nodded, though a part of me hesitated. Some truths, once spoken, can't be undone. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers as though she was trying to wring the words out. My last relationship. It wasn't just a breakup, it was toxic. He broke me in ways I didn't think were possible. I stayed silent, afraid that if I said the wrong thing, she would shut down. He cheated on me, over and over, and every time I caught him, he'd make me feel like I was the crazy one, like I was worthless, like I should be grateful he stayed at all. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through it. And when I finally left, I thought I'd feel free, but instead, I felt empty, like I had lost a piece of myself that I'll never get back. She stopped, her breath shaky. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "That's why I get scared," she whispered. "That's why I push you away sometimes. Because what if you're like him? What if everyone is?" The words pierced me. I wanted to scream that I wasn't him, that I could never be like him. But in that moment, I realized nothing I said would erase her fear. Trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild overnight. "I'm not him," I said softly, "and I don't care how broken you think you are, I'm still here." For a long moment she thus stared at me, as if weighing whether she could believe me. Then, finally, she leaned against me, her body trembling. I held her, And in that fragile closeness, I felt both her surrender and her resistance. That night changed everything between us. After her confession, our love became more fragile, but also more intense. I could feel her testing me, watching to see if I would falter the way he had. Every promise I made carried the weight of her past. Every gesture, no matter how small, became a chance to prove that I was different. But the truth, it was exhausting. Loving her felt like walking across a glass bridge, beautiful, delicate, but always one misstep away from shattering. I never let her see the toll it was taking on me. I wanted to be her anchor, her proof that love could heal instead of destroy. And yet, deep down, I wondered, could I really save her? Or was I slowly drowning with her, mistaking desperation for devotion? The cracks in our love were widening, though at the time I told myself they were just surface scratches. I didn't know then how deep they already ran or how close we were to breaking. Part 4. The cracks. At first, I convinced myself that her honesty would bring us closer. That by opening up, Emily had taken the first step toward healing, and I could be the one to walk that road with her. But love, I was learning, is not always enough. Her insecurities grew louder with time. Every late reply to a message sparked suspicion. Every night I worked late became an accusation. Who were you with? Why didn't you answer? Her questions were sharp, edged with fear, but also with anger. I tried to reassure her, tried to remind her that I was different, but no reassurance seemed to last. The arguments became more frequent, erupting out of nowhere like sudden storms. One evening, I came to her apartment with flowers, only to be met with her tears. She had found an old photo on my social media, a picture of me with a friend from years ago, and she demanded to know why I had never told her about the girl. No explanation calmed her. It didn't matter that the photo was ancient, that the girl was engaged now, that there had never been anything romantic between us. In Emily's eyes, it was proof that I was hiding something. I should have walked away then, a saner man would have. But every time I reached my breaking point, she would collapse in my arms, whispering apologies, begging me not to leave. And I couldn't. I loved her too much, or maybe I was addicted to the chaos, to the desperate intensity of our connection. One night, after a particularly vicious fight, I left her apartment and wandered the city for hours. I ended up at a small bar, nursing a drink I didn't really want. My phone buzzed with her messages, first angry, then pleading, then silent. I stared at the screen, torn between exhaustion and longing. When I finally returned to her, she was curled up on the couch, eyes red from crying. She looked at me as if I were both her salvation and her destroyer. "Don't ever leave me again," she said hoarsely, and I promised, again, but promises made in the middle of despair are fragile. Each one felt heavier than the last, and I was running out of strength to carry them. The worst part was, they were still moments of pure joy, moments that reminded me of the girl had first met at the train station. We'd laugh until our sides hurt, or stay up all night talking about dreams for the future. Those glimpses of happiness kept me hooked, convincing me that if I just held on, things would get better, that love could still win. But in the quiet moments, when she fell asleep and I lay awake beside her, I couldn't silence the question echoing in my head. What if love isn't enough? What if I'm losing myself while trying to save her? And then, one evening, everything collapsed. It was supposed to be a simple dinner at my place. I had cooked for her, burnt the chicken, of course, but she usually found my failures in the kitchen endearing. This time, though, she wasn't smiling. She had found something that would shatter what little trust we had left. Part 5. The collapsive moment she walked into my apartment that night, I knew something was wrong. Her shoulders were tense, her jaw tight, and her eyes carried that stormy look I had come to fear. She didn't greet me, didn't comment on the smell of burnt chicken filling the room. Instead, she dropped her phone on the table with a thud. "Explain this," she demanded. On the screen was a message thread between me and a coworker. Completely innocent, Nothing more than talk about a project and a joke about how terrible the office coffee was, but to Emily, it was betrayal. Proof that I was hiding something, that I was drifting away from her. I tried to explain, my voice calm at first, then desperate. But she wasn't listening. Her fear had already transformed into anger, and no amount of reasoning could pull her back. She shouted, her words laced with pain, accusing me of things I hadn't done, of thoughts I hadn't even had. And for the first time, I broke. I can't do this anymore, I said, louder than I meant to. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we had ever had. Her face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. But this time, I didn't rush to hold her. Don't leave me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ra, please, don't leave me like he did. God, my heart shattered hearing her beg. Every instinct in me wanted to stay, to comfort her, to promise again that I would never walk away. But I realized then that love had turned into something toxic, something that was consuming us both. I wasn't saving her. I was losing myself. I love you, I said softly, my throat tight. But love isn't enough if it's only pain. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, and I stood frozen, torn apart inside. Then, with the weight of 1,000 knives in my chest, I picked up my coat and walked out. The whole way felt endless. Every step away from her was agony, but I knew if I turned back, I'd be trapped again in that cycle of passion and destruction. So I kept walking. Days turned into weeks, and though I didn't see her, she was everywhere, in the songs on the radio, in the books on my shelf, in the ghost of her laughter echoing through my apartment. I missed her with a ferocity that made me sick. But I also knew that missing her was better than being destroyed by her. Sometimes, late at night, I replay the moment we met at the train station. I think about how her laughter lit up that dull, crowded place, and how I believed, for a while, that she was the answer to everything I'd been searching for. Maybe she was, for that moment. Maybe we were meant to find each other, not to last, but to teach. Love can be beautiful. Love can be consuming. And sometimes, love is the wound and the lesson all at once. I'll never forget her. But I had to let her go.